All right. Well, here's our final stop of the evening, folks. It's a good discussion points here, I believe. I'm just going to give you a little history on what happened here on this field, and we'll turn it over, and then we'll probably have a wrap up, and then we'll head back into the yard. But if you look on the far west side of this field, we have some 30-inch Roundup Ready corn, and it was put in. They're both seeded May 14th, and they also each received a supplement of 4 to 5 gallons per acre of the worm inoculant in the furrow. What we're standing in front of here is the 60-inch Roundup Ready corn as well. And this was originally our perennial field. So imagine this field looking just like field 10 where we had the cattle. And last fall, it came time to burn it down and to desiccate it. And of course, myself being a rancher and liking perennials, and Jay being fond of perennials and seeing what they've built as a soil, or built for a soil wise, it was a shame for us to take it out. And we thought, how can we keep the perennial and have a crop? And so we sprayed some strips in. The other thing you'll see in there is a cool season cover crop interseeded as well, which is unique in the fact that normally we probably wouldn't have done that, but we just did it. And so you'll see spring triticale. Go ahead. Right. One nozzle above each row was sprayed out, about 20 to 24 inches. And what you see in here, of course, is your perennial grasses, which also had the 21-way mix in it, like we've seen in field 10. But the other plants that seem a little strange for a perennial are the spring triticale, forage peas, turnips, sweet clover, yellow mustard, and of course this bayou kale, which is right here. So I'll leave you with one final thought, and maybe the three of our experts can answer this question. And is this a pasture or is it a cornfield? That's deep. It's pretty deep for me at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday. So, but answer that question for me. Think about that in your minds. What's the potential for this as far as grazing, diversity, yield, all those things? But we're going to turn it over to Steve first, and we'll let him chat.
I'm not supposed to answer that question, though, am I? Okay, we'll leave it hanging. So, anyone else here trying 60-inch corn? Okay, a couple people. It's kind of like was one of the buzzes of the winter meetings around the nation. Frankly, I was kind of surprised how much interest there was. I don't know of anybody more into this in the research than Bob Recker from Iowa. Anybody know Bob or heard of him? You're shaking your head. Yeah. If you ever get to hear him, if you look up his name, you can find his talk at the National No-Till Conference. It's pretty interesting. He followed, he's been working at this for a couple years, and I worked with, I think, 12 farmers who tried 60-inch corn in 2018. And the first question that comes up is, what is my yield hit? Just to cut right to the chase, they took a 5% yield hit on it. But what do you gain out of it? This opens up lots of opportunities to plant a cover crop, especially in areas where it's difficult to get one established, like here in the fall. You just don't have any time. And especially if you're grazing, that 5% is easily made up. I mean, look at this. Look what's growing here. The other thing I'll make a comment on, you didn't mention it, Darrell, but I will. You intended to increase the population here, and it didn't happen. Typically, those who have been into this are using the same population per acre, so essentially double the population in these rows. Some planters, older planters, aren't capable of doing that, but you go as close as you can. So that's kind of what we're finding out. The other thing I've heard is make sure you get the nitrogen close to the row. I've also heard that. I have not done this yet. We actually have a field day in Pennsylvania on Thursday where this is a core part of our field day. So all over the place, people are trying 60-inch corn. Certainly not what you're going to win a yield contest in, but particularly if you want to try to grow some cover crops and see the benefits of that, this opens up that. Why does this work? If you would go over there and look at the 30-inch corn now, the sunlight, it's getting low already, but a lot of the leaves here you can still see are still getting sunlight. And so we're essentially maximizing the use of sunlight better with the existing plants. That's a theory. Bob has a time-lapse video that's fascinating to watch. 30-inch corn versus 60-inch corn when you see the sunlight. It just kind of opens up your eyes, so to speak, as to how and why this may be working. I think this is something you don't want to try in big acres, small acres. See how it works for you. What about, you said you did it. Did you do it last year or this is your first year? Any comments?
No, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, we seeded our cover crops the same exact day we planted our 60-inch corn. And you're right. I mean, you have to get that nitrogen with that corn. Otherwise, you're just going to have a weed takeover, even over your cover crops. So
I think weed control will be a challenge here. Just saying, that's going to be something I'll have to work out. Who else tried it? Someone back here saw their hand, I think. Do you want to comment, Tyler? Okay, so you agree, nitrogen near the row. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you're feeding the weeds, so to speak. Yeah, get the fertilizer on the rows is pretty important the way it seems. Others want to comment? Questions?
So Steve talked about it being a field. I'm going to say it's a pasture, just for fun. But yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the architecture of the plant here, you say, well, you're losing it because you got half the rows. But you can see the tillers coming out here. I mean, this plant's got 3 cobs. So you're going to have 3 big, healthy cobs coming right there off of one plant. So if we can put in more or put in less and get out more, I think that's the goal of all this. And then I see a huge potential for grazing, late season grazing especially, whether it's chickens or cows or sheep or whatever. You know, by the time this corn crop matures and the leaves turn brown, whatever gets the frost, this undergrowth is still going to be green. You've got warmth from the ground coming up, and if you can get it timed right, it's going to be green and lush. I would love to throw my lambs out there into the cornfield and see what they do with it. So, and it's a no-brainer, I guess, after you get a combine to put your cows out there too. So.
Just a comment, Daryl asked a question whether this is a cornfield or a pasture, and I might go a little deeper than he did. Is this a pasture for your cows, or is this a pasture for the biology in the soil? Exactly. I mean, you look at all this growth here in between the rows. And in a normal cash crop situation, all you've got is 30-inch rows of corn. Here you've got a lot of covers covering that bare ground, a lot of different root systems, and a lot of diversity for all the biology that's there. So instead of just those corn roots every 30 inches, you've got a lot of root mass in between those rows. And so I guess I don't know how it's going to turn out yield-wise or what the return is going to be, but I guess, regardless of those things, something to think about is what's going on underneath the ground and how that'll also have a return for you as well.
Another thing to mention, this is something Rick and I were visiting about earlier, is keeping the ground covered. So if you go in a conventional cornfield this time of year and you walk your way down the rows, the ground is going to be completely bare. And yes, when it starts to rain, the corn will intercept most of those raindrops, but there's still going to be raindrops hitting the ground. And that is a huge force of erosion, actually, is rain itself. When you get a wind with the rain, the hard driving rain, just the force of that raindrop. I know this might have come out of that book that you mentioned earlier I was supposed to read in college, but I think they said just one raindrop can move a soil particle like 6 feet. So you combine that when you get a storm with all the water running downhill. rain itself is actually one of the biggest forces of compaction. And if you don't get the infiltration, you got the weight of the water building up and just increasing the problem. So whether it's a field or a pasture, it's good for the soil.
You guys want to come up further to the west and come in and take a look? You're sure welcome to. So come on up, get a little closer if you want. Any questions or comments again on this? On this? Yeah, on your just the straight glyphosate. The question was, what kind of chemical did we use for the burn down? It was just a straight glyphosate. One operation. We've only sprayed it once. Right. Any other questions, comments? Yes, there is. We did have to put some fertilizer on this. We had some tie up again with the grass, the perennial, and it just needed a boost. So next year, the plan, probably sunflowers right within where the corn was. So stay tuned for that. Yes, Steve.
One more comment. I mentioned the yields, 5% yield reduction on that study, multiple farms. We're doing this with varieties that we really don't know are the best varieties for this system. And so I think that gives room. We'll have to determine which varieties. Is it a flex? Should we have a flex here on here? And they've been looking at that, but that's not been totally determined yet. So we're kind of using varieties that we don't really know which ones, which type, upright leaf, floppy leaf, all those variables that will be studied this year, are being studied this year. So I think this has potential in broad areas. Certainly not for everybody right away, but I would say it doesn't take too much. There's no equipment modifications other than shutting off every other row and adjusting your population and keeping that nitrogen on the row. Other than that, pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Steve. I guess I'll just wrap it up and see if Steve and them have any other comments.
Just wanted to make one comment myself. This evening, our goal was to emphasize the soil health principles in a systems approach. And when we put them on the ground, then I think a lot of things become possible. And so as we have the principles on the ground functioning, that changes some perspectives of what we do in the future. But if we're going to build soils, I think we have to get the principles on the ground. That's a good place to start. The other comment I wanted to make about was this evening. So we took this kind of middle-aged to older gentleman from Pennsylvania, and we partnered him with two young farmers from North Dakota. And didn't the three of them just do an outstanding job? We should give them a hand. So we bring in some expertise from somebody who's been in this a long time, and we bring in also the future in North Dakota agriculture. And I think that together makes a really good combination. So thank you.
Well, gentlemen, I really can't top that summary. I think that's kind of, I would have hit that myself. So thank you. Saved my wind. Steve, do you want to give us a wrap up or anything on what you've seen tonight? And again, appreciate the opportunity that you're here and thanks for coming, but here you go.
So I'm going to challenge you again to take what you learned today, analyze it, think about it. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish in your situation, in your fields? Take up that 10% challenge, push yourself just a little bit. What can you do a little bit further just to try some things? Look for a mentor. Who can you follow? Who can you connect with? There's a lot of, if you're into social media, form a little group. Rick and I have been with one for a while. There's different opportunities out there. What's your style? Attend meetings like this. You have to put some time and effort to make this work. Simple concepts here, but very complex to pull it off in order to be successful. I can't emphasize that because those who have been successful have put way more time and effort in than you probably ever know. And so this is a lot of new things we're doing, but the wonderful thing is we got a lot of resources now that are out there. So my closing statement is stay curious and keep learning, and you'll be successful.
Yep. Justin, Aaron, anything? Please? Nothing? Go ahead.
Me and Justin are pretty young yet, and so we've got a lot to learn, but we've also learned a lot along the way. This started a long time ago, and I think it takes a lot of years and a lot of trial and error to finally get your mind changed and your mind to work a different way. And, you just have to listen over and over to finally get enough motivation to put some of these things into practice. And, so it's good to see young men, young women here today, because those are the minds that are more easily malleable and can accept some different ways of doing things. I'm sure a lot of you have tried some of these things already, and if you've been discouraged about some of your results, just stay with it. And soon enough, it just kind of becomes natural. And when a situation arises where you can use a cover crop or something like that, it becomes more instinctive instead of a question where you have to sit there and scratch your head for a while about it. So, like Steve said, just keep learning and keep at it, and it'll come. It'll come to you. So thanks.
And don't forget to have fun. This is fun. So with that, thanks.
Well said, I think. Thank you. All three of you.